Thank you for always tuning in to watch my content. Please, if you are yet to subscribe to my channel, kindly do so and follow me for more interesting content. So for today, we are going to be discussing on the topic how to cope with an emotionally abusive relationship. In this lesson, I'll be speaking on the following points. What is emotional abuse? Signs of emotional abuse, types of emotional abuse, impacts of emotional abuse, coping tips of emotional abuse, what doesn't work with emotional abuse, and healing from emotional abuse. So let's dive right in, guys. What is emotional abuse? Emotional abuse involves controlling another person by using emotions to criticize, embarrass, shame, blame, or otherwise manipulate them. While most common in dating and marriage relationships, mental or emotional abuse can occur in any relationship, including among friends, family members, and even co-workers. In general, a relationship is emotionally abusive when there is a consistent pattern of abusive words and bullying behaviors that wears down a person's self-esteem and undermines their mental health. The underlying goal of emotional abuse is to control the other person by discrediting them, isolating them, and silencing them. Emotional abuse, otherwise known as psychological abuse or mental abuse, is one of the hardest forms of abuse to recognize, as it can be subtle and insidious, but it can also be overt and manipulative. Either way, emotional abuse can chip away at your self-esteem, and you can begin to doubt your perceptions and reality. In the end, you may feel trapped. Emotionally abused people are often too wounded to endure the relationship any longer, but also too afraid to leave. So the cycle repeats itself until something is done. Now let's talk about the signs of emotional abuse. There are several signs of emotional abuse. Please keep in mind that even if your partner, parent, co-worker, or friend only does a handful of these signs, your relationship with them is still emotionally abusive. When considering your relationship, also remember that emotional abuse is often subtle. As a result, it can be extremely hard to detect the signs of emotional abuse. So if you are having trouble discerning whether your relationship is abusive, think about how your reactions, your interactions make you feel with this person. If you feel wounded, frustrated, confused, misunderstood, depressed, anxious, or worthless anytime you interact with this other person, chances are high that your relationship is emotionally abusive. Also, don't fall into the trap of telling yourself that it is not that bad and minimize the other person's behavior. Everyone deserves to be treated with kindness and respect, including you. So realizing this can help you stop the emotional abuse cycle. Now let's speak on the signs of emotional abuse itself. First, unrealistic expectations. One sign of emotional abuse is if the other person places unrealistic expectations on you. For example, making unreasonable demands from you, expecting you to put everything aside and meet their needs, demanding you spend all your time together, being dissatisfied no matter how hard you try and how much you give. This person is never satisfied. Criticizing you for not completing tasks according to their standards. Expecting you to share their opinion. That is, you are not permitted to have a different opinion. Demanding that you name exact dates and times when discussing things that upset you. And when you cannot do this, they may dismiss the event as if it never happened. Another sign of emotional abuse in a relationship is if this person always invalidates you. Examples of invalidation include undermining, dismissing, or distorting your perceptions or your reality. Refusing to accept your feelings by trying to define how you should feel. Requiring you to explain how you feel over and over. Accusing you of being too sensitive, too emotional, or even crazy. Refusing to acknowledge or accept your opinions or ideas as valid. Dismissing your requests, wants, and needs as ridiculous or unmerited. Suggesting that your perceptions are wrong or that you cannot be trusted by saying things like, "You are blowing this out of proportion," or "You always exaggerate." Accusing you of being selfish, needy, or materialistic if you express your wants or needs. That is, the expectation is that you should not have any wants or needs. Another sign of emotional abuse is when this person always creates chaos. Emotionally abusive people also tend to create chaos. Examples of this include starting arguments for the sake of arguing, making confusing and contradictory statements, sometimes called crazy making, having drastic mood change or sudden emotional outbursts, nitpicking at your clothes, hair, work, and more, behaving so erratically and unpredictably that you feel like you are walking on eggshells. Another sign of emotional abuse in a relationship is if this person uses emotional blackmail. If someone tries to use your emotions against you, this is a sign of emotional abuse. For example, manipulating and controlling you by making you feel guilty, giving you a guilt trip, humiliating you in public or in private, using your fears, values, compassion, or other hot buttons to control you or the situation, exaggerating your flaws or pointing them out in order to deflect attention or to avoid taking responsibility for their own poor choices or mistakes, denying that an event took place or lying about it, punishing you by withholding affection or giving you the silent treatment. Another sign of emotional abuse in a relationship is if this person always acts superior. People who are emotionally abusive often act superior and entitled. Things to look out for when considering whether the person in your life exhibits this sign of emotional abuse include treating you like you are inferior, blaming you for their mistakes and shortcomings, doubting everything you say and attempting to prove you wrong, making jokes at your expense, telling you that your opinions, ideas, and values and thoughts are stupid, they're illogical, or they do not make sense, talking down to you or being condescending, using sarcasm when interacting with you, acting like they are always right, they know what is best and are smarter than you. Another sign of emotional abuse in a relationship is if this person tries to control and isolate you. Emotionally abusive people will attempt to isolate and control you. Examples of this form of emotional abuse is controlling who you see or spend time with, including friends and family, monitoring you digitally, including text messages, social media, and email, accusing you of cheating or being jealous of outside relationships, taking or hiding your car keys, demanding to know where you are at all times, or even using GPS to track your every move, treating you like a possession or property, criticizing or making fun of your friends, family, and co-workers, using jealousy and envy as a sign of love to keep you from being with others, coercing you into spending all your time together, and also controlling the finances. Now that we know the signs of emotional abuse in a relationship, let's talk about types of emotional abuse. Emotional abuse can take several different forms. This includes accusation of cheating or other signs of jealousy and possessiveness, constant checking on or attempting to control the other person's behavior, constant arguing or opposing, criticizing, gaslighting, isolating the individual from their family and friends, name-calling and verbal abuse, refusing to participate in the relationship, shaming or blaming, silent treatment, trivializing the other person's concerns, withholding affection and attention. Understand that your relationship may appear to be normal and loving at the start, with these types of emotional abuse being employed later as the relationship progresses, in an attempt to begin to manipulate and control you. The other person may begin so slowly that you may not even notice them at first. Conflict is a normal part of a relationship, but emotional abuse is not. However, if during the conflict with the other person you feel as if you are being bullied, you feel as if you are being disrespected, you feel as if you are being belittled, insulted, or dismissed, these are signs that it may have crossed the line into emotional abuse. Now let's talk on the impact of emotional abuse. When emotional abuse is severe and ongoing, you can lose your entire sense of self. Over time, the accusations, verbal abuse, name-calling, criticisms, and gaslighting can erode your sense of self so much that you can no longer see yourself realistically. Consequently, you may begin to agree with the abuser and become internally critical. Once this happens, you become trapped in the emotionally abusive relationship. believing that you will never be good enough for anyone else. Eventually, you may pull back from friendships and isolate yourself, convinced that no one likes you. Emotional abuse can impact friendships because emotionally abused people often worry about how people see them and if they truly like them. Emotional abuse also have some mental impacts. These include depression, anxiety, and sometimes the development of an eating disorder. Having spoken about the impact of emotional abuse, let's talk on the tips for dealing with emotional abuse. The first step in dealing with an emotionally abusive relationship is to recognize the abuse. It is important to acknowledge that first and foremost. Very important. You should be able to identify the aspect of emotional abuse in your relationship. By being honest about what you're experiencing, you can begin to take control of your life again. When it comes to your mental and physical health, make yourself a priority. Stop worrying about pleasing the person abusing you. Take care of your needs. Do something that will help you think positively and affirm who you are. Also, be sure to get an appropriate amount of rest and eat healthy meals. These simple self-care steps can go a long way in helping you deal with the day-to-day stresses of emotional abuse. Second tip, establish boundaries. Firmly tell that abusive person that they may no longer yell at you. They may no longer call you names, insult you, be rude to you, and so on. Then tell them that something will happen if they choose to engage in this behavior. For instance, tell them that if they call you names or insult you, the conversation will be over and you will leave the room. The key is to follow through on your boundaries. This reinforces to the other person that their emotional abuse will no longer be tolerated. Please, do not communicate boundaries that you have no intention of keeping. You must learn to keep your boundaries. The third tip is stop blaming yourself. If you have been in an emotionally abusive relationship for any amount of time, you may believe that there is something severely wrong with you, but you are not the problem. To abuse is to make a choice. Stop blaming yourself for something you have no control over. The next tip is realize you can't fix them. Despite your best effort, you will never be able to change an emotionally abusive person by doing something different or by being different. An abusive person makes a choice to behave abusively. Remind yourself that you cannot control their actions and that you are not to blame for their choices. The only thing you can control is your response to emotional abuse. Another tip is avoid engaging. Do not engage with an abusive person. In other words, if an abuser tries to start an argument with you, begins insulting you, demands things from you, or rages with jealousy, do not try to make explanations or soothe their feelings or make apologies for things you did not do. Simply walk away from the situation if you can. Engaging with an abuser only sets you up for more abuse and heartache. No matter how hard you try, you will not be able to make things right in their eyes. Another tip is build a support network. Although it can be tough to tell somebody that you are going through emotional abuse, but speaking up can help. Talk to a trusted friend, a family member, or even a counselor about what you are experiencing. Take time away from the abusive person as much as possible and spend time with people who love and support you. This network of healthy friends and confidence will help you feel less lonely and isolated. They also can speak truth into your life and help you put things into perspective. The final tip is work on an exit plan. If your partner, friend, or family member has no intention of changing or working on their poor choices, you will not be able to remain in the abusive relationship forever. It will eventually take a toll on you both mentally and physically. Depending on your situation, you may need to take steps to end the relationship. Each situation is different. So, discuss your thoughts and ideas with a trusted friend, my advice, family member, or counselor. Emotional abuse can have serious long-term effects, but it can also be a precursor to physical abuse and violence. Remember too that abuse often escalates when the person being abused makes a decision to leave. So be sure that you have a safety plan in place should the abuse get worse. Now, there are some things that will not work with emotional abuse. Let's talk about them. What doesn't work with emotional abuse? Arguing with the abuser. Trying to argue with an abuser can escalate the problem and may result in violence. There is no way to argue with an abuser because they will always find more ways to blame, shame, or criticize you. They may also try to turn the tables and play the victim. Trying to understand or make excuses for the abuser does not work with emotional abuse. It might be tempting to try to make sense of the person's behavior or to come up with excuses to justify their actions. Finding ways to sympathize with or minimize an abuser's actions can make leaving the situation that much more difficult for you. Another thing that doesn't work with emotional abuse is attempting to appease the abuser. Appeasing the other person might seem like a form of de-escalation, but it tends to backfire in the long run and may serve to enable more abuse. Instead of trying to change yourself or your behaviors to suit the abuser's whims, focus on establishing clear boundaries and avoid engaging with them if possible. I have made a video on how to create boundaries in a relationship. I would like you to watch that video as this will be very, very helpful. Now let's talk about healing from emotional abuse. If you've experienced emotional abuse, there are a few things you can do to aid in the healing process. First, acknowledge the abuse. Stop minimizing or even denying the abuse and admit that it did happen so you can begin to heal from it. Make a commitment to yourself. Commit to stopping the emotional abuse cycle. Also, commit to sticking with the healing process no matter how long it takes, because you are worth it and you deserve to live a happy life. Practice self-compassion. Give yourself the same level of compassion, kindness, and flexibility to grow as you would give a friend who has experienced emotional abuse. Reach out to loved ones. Get in touch with the people who care about you, who support you so that they can help you through this difficult time. Seek counseling. Psychotherapy can help you put your emotionally abusive relationship into perspective while also providing tools for overcoming the abuse. Talk with others who have been emotionally abused. Sharing your experiences with others who have been through the same can help you recognize that you aren't alone, also providing access to the strategies they use that help them heal. Healing from emotional abuse takes time. Taking care of yourself, reaching out to your supportive loved ones, and talking to a therapist can help. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching me. Feel free to subscribe for more valuable content, and also remember to share this video with your loved ones. Thank you. See you in the next session, and bye.